As the title of this video goes, I regret buying my first property here in the UK. So a little background about myself. I worked in a bank for 8 years. I bought my first property in 2017. And so from then till now, it's been almost 5 years. So I'm doing this video after having this property for more than 4 years. So I've learned a lot, and my regrets have materialized over the years. And I wanted to make this video to pretty much advise and encourage anyone else who's trying to make this decision so they do it right the first time and not have too many regrets down the line. Number one, my first regret was that it was an emotional decision for me. What does that mean? I went in with the idea of buying my first property because I was tired. I was tired of sharing my space with other people. So before I bought my first property, I was renting, but I would rent with friends. So I would get a friend and then come together with her and then go and rent a 2-bedroom, and then 2-bedroom, 2-bath was what I was really doing. I did that for about 3 years, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And then the things that started coming up was I'd have family visits and they will be in the space of this other friend or this other person I'm sharing with. When things get spoiled, it's like, what happened here? Who spoiled it? And then we have to fix and pay. Just a little bit of misunderstanding here and there. Majority of the time it was great. There was one friend I lived with which was amazing because I knew her for a long time. But before then there was one person I lived with which was really hellish for me. So when I got to the point where I'd saved up some money, I said to myself, I need to buy my own flats right away. And it being such an emotional decision for me didn't help me to make the right choice because I didn't take my time to research. I didn't take my time to ask the questions. And I just thought, as long as I have a lawyer and I have a mortgage advisor, I know all that I need to know to buy my first flat or my first property. So take your time when you're buying your first property. Don't be in a rush because you are tired of renting or you don't want to give a landlord money anymore. You just want to put it in your own property. Because if you buy the wrong property to start, then, or if you put yourself in the wrong arrangement, let me put it that way, then you have issues for the longer term. The second regret was buying a new build flat. This one. So new builds are interesting. First of all, when you go for viewings, they are shiny, they are new, nobody has lived there before. It's your first flat, you're excited. You're like, wow, nobody has lived here, everything is mine. Sometimes you get the chance to even choose the color of some of like the kitchen area. You can choose sometimes the color of the wall or maybe the flooring or the carpet. So new builds usually come at a premium to the rest of the street or to the rest of the houses in the area. So what you need to remember is that because it's at a premium, naturally, it usually depreciates quite quickly. So within the first few years, it depreciates very quickly to pretty much match up the rest of the houses or flats on the street. So in this case, if let's say you are looking at the flats on the street, which are maybe 5 to 10 years old, that will be your flat or your house in the next 5 years, even though to you it's new. So buying a new build was a regret for me because it depreciated. It depreciated significantly to the extent that I was looking to sell the flat 4 years after I bought it. And the price I got was, let me calculate the percentage difference, was about 7 to 8% less than how much I bought it for. And to put it in context, this was in London. So technically the prices of houses or flats here are more expensive than up north or even in the Midlands. So 7% difference is significant. It was going to be tens of thousands of pounds that I was going to lose when I sell it. So I did a valuation and I realized that it came down lower. So I was quite sad that happened because in my mind, because I've kept it for 4 years, the value of the property should go up, and that did not happen. Now, my third regret is that it was a leasehold. Now, I think I've mentioned a few times here that it was a flat, and most flats in the UK are leaseholds. So leasehold means that you are leasing the land on which the property is built. So because of that, this came with ground rent and service charge. Ground rent is pretty much fixed and it's supposed to be paid yearly. So I think my ground rent is around £240 a year. So it doesn't really break the bank, right? But the second part, the service charge, is the most difficult one. So when you're buying the property, majority of the time you're buying it from a developer, and the developer tells you that, oh, service charge is this per square meter per flat, right? So if your flat is smaller, you have this square meterage, and then you multiply it by the number they give you. And it will usually be in thousands, right? Thousands per year. And then you notice that the moment you finish buying it, this complex of flats is being managed by a management company. And then they'll start sending you service charge to pay, and they'll give you an account of what they are using the service charge for. So I was told that, oh, the service charge will usually increase the rate at which inflation is increasing. That was a lie. The service charge was increasing like crazy. Every year, almost 1,000 was added to it. And you can't really do anything because you live there. It's your house, it's your flat. So in this case, it looked like I was paying rent again. And rent that even, I couldn't control, because now I bought the flat, I live in there, and then when a management company comes to say, oh, because of this and this and this, the service charge has gone up, all we have to do is pay. We complained a lot on like our group page that we had for the whole complex, but we still had to pay. So that was one regret I had. I wish I had bought a freehold rather than a leasehold flat to start. The next one is buying the house in my name. Why? So you need to look at this for your own self, whether you want to buy it in your name or in a limited liability company. Why it's a regret for me is that I bought a 1-bed flat. Because in my mind, as I said before, it was such an emotional decision for me. I didn't want to share. I wanted to have my own space, my own little heaven where I've decorated with all the nice things I wanted in my house, had my own TV, had my own bathroom. I didn't want to share anything. So because of that, I was like, hey, I'll just buy a 1-bed. It's even the cheapest. So I bought this 1-bed, and then and then I noticed that later down the line, my vague plan, because I didn't really do the research, was to just move out when I get married in future, or when I have a family, move out and then rent this out. Now, I get to a part where I'm now doing the research about moving out and renting what I live in, and notice that I can't just rent it, because one, I would need to inform the lender, the mortgage lender, that it's not a residential flat anymore, and it's a buy-to-let flat. And in that case, they'll need to change everything. They'll need to change how I borrow the money. They would have to assess me again. And then the second thing was also that I had used Help to Buy, and I'm not going to go into Help to Buy in this particular video, but Help to Buy equity loan, and that also had the clause that I couldn't rent it out and it needs to be my own residential flat. So that became a problem for me. And the third part was that even if I happened to switch to a buy-to-let mortgage, I couldn't take the interest of the mortgage out of the rental I get before it is taxed. And at this point, I was around the higher tax paying rate in this country. So that means that if I was getting £1,000 a month, for instance, and my mortgage, my interest on my loan or my mortgage interest payments was £500, I was going to pay tax on £1,000 before I can take my interest out. So because I was at the higher end of taxation in terms of like my salary, I was already paying about 40%. And then after that, I'm now going to take out the 500, which is the interest on the mortgage. So now it didn't even make sense for me to rent it out. So it got to a point, I had this flat that I wanted to move out of to get a bigger one. And then I realized that, wait, I can't even rent it out, because if I rent it out, I'll be losing money rather than making money. So that's when I decided, okay, let me see whether I can sell it. And I noticed that I could only sell it for cheaper. So in my mind, I was just crystallizing losses in every angle that I was trying to tend to. My next one was buying a 1-bedroom house on a ground floor. Now, when I went to see this flat, when I wanted to buy it, there was only the ground floor apartments left, and for a good reason. Because in this country or in London, most people like to buy flats that are on the higher floor than the ground floor. But I really wanted to be in the area. I really like the area. And I was like, see, it's new build. There's no other new build around. I just really want this complex. So I agreed to the ground floor flats. And when I tried to sell it, I noticed that anyone who comes is like, oh, it's on the ground floor. I don't have a view. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy this one. Which became a problem for me because now I didn't have any privacy on the ground floor. Anyone can pass by and see in your balcony and see what's going on. If your curtains are drawn, anyone passing by can see what's going on in your flat. So my next regret was buying a 1-bed on the ground floor because a 1-bed were not as favorable to sell as much as like the 2-beds were. So I'll put it in context. About 5 years down the line, when I looked, a lot of people were trying to sell their flats in my complex because most of us used Help to Buy, and the Help to Buy equity loan, the loan lasts for 5 years without interest. So usually after 5 years, people try to sell it. And then those who bought 2-bedroom flats who are trying to sell it, there is like about a 10 to 20%, a 10% increase in the asking prices that they've put online. Those who bought a 1-bedroom flat, there's no increase in the asking prices that they've put online. So they're pretty much asking for the same price that they bought it for. So naturally, most people desire 2 beds compared to 1 beds. So the fact that I bought a 1-bed didn't help, and being on the ground floor didn't help at all. Now, the last one, which was a shock to me when I found out, was when I decided to go on holiday and use my flat for Airbnb. And I was told I cannot do it. So it turns out that when I bought the flat, which I did not know was in there because my lawyer did not point it out to me, there was a clause that I cannot use the flat or any of the flats in the particular complex for service accommodation or for short-term lets for less than 3 months, meaning I can't put on Airbnb. Now, if you think about the fact that you've saved so much money in this country to manage to buy a flat in London, and then you are going on holiday, you're like, oh, I just want to earn a few coins because I'm away for, let's say, a month or 2, and you try to list it on Airbnb and get a letter from the management company saying you've breached the contract because you are now using your flat for service accommodation or for short-term lets. That was a shock to me because I'm like, I'm bearing all the financial cost of this building, of this flat, and everybody just telling me what they want me to do with my flat. Unfortunately, I couldn't use it for Airbnb. I had to cancel all the guests that were coming in, and I learned the lesson the hard way. So whenever you're buying a flat, please read the contract from front to back. If you don't understand, make sure your lawyer explains it to your solicitor. One thing about the solicitors is they just pass on documents. They give it to you, they pass it to the seller, they give it to the seller, they're just passing on documents. They don't really sit down and explain stuff to you. And it's your right for you to ask them questions because you are paying them. So ask them so many questions. If you read something in the contract and you don't understand, go back and ask them. If you read something you don't understand, go back and ask them. So that you know what you're getting yourself into. And in this case, what I made another mistake by using the solicitor that the seller, which is the developer, recommended. So sometimes the developer will recommend a solicitor that you should use because the solicitor has probably worked with them before and knows all their processes, so it makes things go faster. But faster will come at a cost because the solicitor will just, do the process, explain the surface things to you and just say, okay, let's exchange so that the developer can get their money. So make sure you read that contract. It was long, but I wish I had read it because I would have noticed that there is no way I can use this for Airbnb or even short-term accommodation down the line. So yes, these are the things I wanted to share with you all about buying your first property. what I would recommend, but you have to do your own research, I would prefer to have bought a freehold apartment or a freehold house. As it stands now, I would have preferred to have done my research well enough to understand that new builds usually depreciate slightly after a few years before it starts going up. Most new builds, but it's not the same in every area. Sometimes you buy a new build and when you want to sell it in 5 years, it's gone up. But the rule of thumb is that most new builds usually depreciate. I wouldn't have bought a flat, I would have bought a house. And one thing about buying houses in this country is that majority of the time, if it's not a newish house that's just been built or been built over the past 5 years, you probably need to do some renovations inside the house, which will cost you some money. So just be aware of that, because you probably want to make your own. So then you have to like change a little bit of how olden it looks and make it a bit more newish for yourself. But if I had a house, I would have had maybe upstairs and downstairs, turned one room into like a rental and rented that out and that would have helped pay my mortgage or like something. And maybe down the line when I got married or I wanted to build a family, I could have just had my family move in, or we could have used that as our main primary place of residence, and then if we had surplus cash, then we use it to buy a rental, rather than you trying to move out of your current residential place, which is a flat, and then now having to go through the mortgage to change it to a buy-to-let, and then realizing that when you have in your name, you can't take the interest out before you pay taxes, and it becomes messy. So I hope you found this helpful. Share it with a friend if you think this was helpful to you, and if you have any questions, just let me know down below. Yeah, all right then, catch you later.